Welcome to the Pat White Show.
Well, if you residents of Indiana, I've got both good news and bad news. You just have to decide which one works for you, and when I get finished telling you what's going on. It has to do with marijuana. Yep, marijuana. Well, apparently the governor of Indiana, Mike Braun, has said, I got to start looking into this. I may not want to do it, but every state around us is getting into marijuana, and they're taking a boatload of money away from us. And we got a budget to worry about that we're going to have to deal with in 2027. Because 2027, every 2 years, they got to figure out a budget because the budget lasts for 2 years. So they want money. Well, so he's saying, legislature's got to think about taking up legalizing marijuana in the Hoosier state. Well, you would think that would be joyous news to some of you, and it probably is. But to the Indiana Chamber of Commerce, it is not joyous news, and here's the bad news. This is what the Indiana Chamber of Commerce says. The Indiana Chamber opposes the legislation of marijuana in any form for recreational use and opposes the legalization of botanical marijuana for medical use until time when its efficacy and its safety have been proven through clinical trials. Now, I don't know about you, but I have no idea when anything like that's going to happen. Clinical trials, well, maybe they're being conducted in other states or other areas. I know the president has changed it from a level 1 drug to a level 3 drug, which does allow for trials. But will the state of Indiana take this up? Well, here's the problem. The Chamber of Commerce in Indiana is extremely powerful. And I mean very powerful. And those guys or gals are saying, we don't want this for medical marijuana. We don't want it for recreational marijuana. And here's one of the reasons. It seems that back in the 70s and 80s, marijuana back in those days had THC content of around 3%. Okay, that was the content back 70s, 80s, maybe into the 90s, who knows. But today, marijuana is cultivated by these labs, these specialists. They design stuff that's beyond anything you can imagine. And the THC content in marijuana today is like 30%. This is beyond, you figure 10 times what it was back in the 70s. Back then, we called that stuff ditchweed. Well, today, this high-quality stuff they're selling, and they are selling a lot of it in other states around us, has 30%. Now, does it have a medical use? Let's talk about that for a second. The answer is yes, it does. Now, I'm not saying it's a cure for anything, but I do know people who are undergoing chemotherapy in particular. They're having a very rough time trying to deal with all that stuff and drugs and killer things they're putting into their body to kill the cancer they don't eat. Well, it turns out marijuana helps them bring back an appetite, helps them feel better. So, in my opinion, would it be good for medical reasons? I think yes, but the problem is this. Doctors around the country are prescribing marijuana for mental health, and studies have indicated it don't work that way. You got OCD, you got schizophrenia, you got, all these particular mental issues. Marijuana is not good for that. There's other things they could use for those particular problems. Marijuana ain't the thing, but that's what doctors are prescribing for in states where they have medical marijuana. So, where do we stand now? Well, the legislature starts up next year. It'll be a battle because of the budget they got to work out. But will the Chamber of Commerce finally relent and allow the legislatures to decide if they want it or not? I do not know. But I can tell you right now, the Chamber of Commerce people, and they are very powerful down in Indianapolis, are saying, nay, nay, nay. We don't want that stuff unless it's proven for the efficacy and its safety in clinical trials. I'm not sure they're ever going to get that. But are they going to get people saying, hey, we want this? After all the other states around us, you go up to Michigan, you've seen all the billboards and the ads and everything going on. In Ohio and Illinois, now in Kentucky's even doing medical marijuana. Everybody seems to be doing it in one way, shape, or form. And there sits Indiana. There are only about, 15 states in the United States that haven't either made it medical or recreational. We're one of those 15. So, will it change? I don't know. Will the legislature say, hey, this is something we've got to do because we need the money? My guess is if they do it, it's going to say we need the money. because they're losing all the money to the other states. And they want money for whatever. So we'll see what happens. But right now, there's your good news. The governor of Indiana says we need to address medical marijuana, or marijuana in general. Bad news is the Chamber of Commerce says, nay, 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 we don't want anything of that. Where will it work out? How will it work out? Right now, it's anyone's guess. But if you want to contact your legislator and find out where they're thinking and what they want, you're allowed to do it. But right now, it's on the table, folks. Will it stay on the table? Nobody knows. But at least you know what's going on. And that's why I'm here, to tell you, now you know. Well, some new information has come out about the utilization of marijuana. Now, I realize marijuana is a big topic people talk about, but a new study has just been released by an Australian research group, and they've been researching since 1980 to 2025, multiple, and I've had 54 studies they've done, says that people who are prescribed marijuana for mental health issues doesn't work. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't work for other things, and that's what they're saying also. But they said when it comes down to studies, using marijuana does not improve mental health conditions, things like anorexia nervosa, bipolar, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD as they call it, psychotic disorders like schizophrenia. Marijuana does not help in those situations. Now, are there other things available that could do that? Yes, there are. And other people can be prescribed things, but right now, most of those doctors out there on the medical marijuana are prescribing it for people in their mental health conditions, not because they have any other situation. However, state of Indiana has been reluctant about legalizing marijuana, even though you go to Ohio, you go to Michigan, you go to other states, like 35 states have already legalized it, but Indiana says, not doing it. Not even medical marijuana. And I will tell you, I happen to know that medical marijuana, in many cases for people that are on chemotherapy, actually helps a great deal. And that can help people with certain other situations. And frankly, for those folks, yeah, I understand your problem. And frankly, medical marijuana wouldn't bother me if they prescribed it. But prescribing it for mental health situations, the studies, and these have been published in Lancet, been published in JAMA. These are the big places, the big prestige locations saying, doesn't work for mental health situations. Physical situations, totally understand. But since the latest story says that more and more people are quitting alcohol, and I thought to myself, okay, if they're quitting alcohol, what are they going to? Well, apparently a lot of folks are quitting alcohol and going on to marijuana. They said, well, it doesn't kill you, because alcohol will kill your liver and make you die, and that's not a good plan. Marijuana, well, the problem is that I see it, too many young people. You get young kids getting into this stuff before their brains have even developed, you got yourself a bad problem, just starting for you. You get somebody who's addicted to this stuff at an early age, and can you become addicted to marijuana? The studies say yes. I'm not a doctor. I'm just telling you what the studies are saying that I'm reading. However, there is a value to it. Like I said, in some medical cases, it certainly can be. Will Indiana change their laws? I don't know. Federal law, that hasn't changed yet, and I don't know what's going to happen here in this state. But yes, people are getting off of alcohol. The sales are gone down. The numbers show it. They're going to something else. Well, could it be marijuana? I don't know. But keep in mind, the doctors who are prescribing marijuana for people with mental health issues, like the OCD and the bipolar, bad plan. The marijuana today, and this is something to take a real serious look at. The marijuana today, as compared to the marijuana in the 1970s. When I was young, I think the content of THC in marijuana was like 4%. That's what it was. They call it ditchweed, for crying out loud, back in that era. Today, it could be as much as, you ready? 35%. Because the horticulture on marijuana is being done today, being grown the way it's being grown, it is now so much more powerful than that stuff back in the 1970s. And that stuff can, in fact, cause addiction to some people, not everybody. But are we going to change? Are we going to adapt things what the rest of the nation is doing? I don't know. But as far as mental health goes, it ain't good for that. Is it good for some other things? Yes, it is. And will it become medically available? I don't know. But right now, Indiana is behind the power curve to many people. But until the U.S. national law changes, not sure anything's going to change in Indiana. And now, well, you know. Let me ask you a question. When you were growing up as a kid, did you eat cereal for breakfast? Well, I know I did. I think my favorite was Rice Krispies, maybe little rice checks, and hey, oh, how about Tony's Frosted Flakes? Those are some of the favorites I had when I was a kid, but what'd you eat when you were a kid? By any chance, did you get into some of those really colorful cereals, like Fruit Loops and Apple Jacks and Trix and Lucky Charms or Fruity Pebbles? Maybe you didn't. But maybe you fed them to your kids. And if you fed them to your kids, well, there's something going on you might want to know about. You see, there's a problem with these cereals that are brightly colored. They have something called certified synthetic colors. You may have heard the terms like red dye number 40 and yellow dye number 5 and blue dye number 1. Well, it turns out those dyes may not be good for you. And as a result, people are starting to look at those cereals and saying, do we really need those dyes in there? We really need those colors, and that's what we're feeding to our children. Target stores out of Minnesota. Turns out that Target stores, starting in May, which is a couple of months from now, is going to quit, and I mean stop selling certain cereals that carry these certified artificial colors. So starting in May, if you want to go out to Target and pick up your Fruit Loops, your Apple Jacks, your Trix, your Lucky Charms, your Fruity Pebbles, or whatever bright cereal you get, you're not going to find them on the shelves at Target. And it turns out that the other cereal makers have figured out maybe this isn't a good plan. General Mills has already announced they're going to remove their certified colors, they call them, from their portfolio of all of their cereals starting in the summer of 2026. Kellogg's, they're planning on doing it in 2027. Now, you're saying, well, geez, does that affect all the cereals you eat? No, not necessarily. The darker cereals, sort of like if you get some of those peanut butter ones, those they use sugar and they turn them into caramel. And you cook sugar long enough, you're going to get caramel. It's the colors they use, so they're not no certified colors are used in a lot of those cereals. The smartest thing you could do nowadays is take a look at the box. See if your cereal that you're feeding your kids has certified colors in it. Is it a good idea to feed your kids certified colors? Well, people in the medical fields are now saying, nah, this is probably not a good idea. You have no idea what those artificial certified colors, the red dye reds, the red dye 40 and the yellow dye 5 and blue dye 1, well, they're finding out that these dyes aren't necessarily good for your body and creating a lot of problems. Well, if you don't want problems for yourself or your kids, or if you're feeding your grandparents or parents cereal, you might get rid of those colored cereals. At least take a look and see what's going on. Now, are they starting to make new cereals with the same colors? Yes, they are. They're using certain fruits, certain vegetables, things like that. Like beets. You make things red with beets and other colors along that line. So, if you're concerned about what you're putting in your body, especially in your kids' bodies, when it comes to the fruity cereals, nice bright colors, Lucky Charms look good. Certified colors, that's not very good. Target's going to stop selling them in May, and other stores are going to probably follow suit. General Mills is getting rid of the certified colors, and so is Kellogg's. But overall, folks, looks like we're starting to try to eat more healthy and stop eating what we've been eating over the years, because apparently it has not made us better. It has actually made us worse. And now you know. Well, what do you say we take a couple of minutes and talk about food? Because we all like to eat, and especially we like to eat out. Well, here's the latest information on one of the top restaurants, if you happen to be interested in going out restaurant hopping. For a number of years, like since 2018, the #1 restaurant chain in the United States has been the Olive Garden. That's right, Olive Garden was #1 since 2018. But guess what? Olive Garden is no longer #1. You know what's #1 now? Believe it or not, with a 14.7% growth in 2024, number one restaurant now is Texas Roadhouse. That's right. And if you've been to a Texas Roadhouse, try to find parking. That's a one-number problem. And then getting in, you got to get advance reservations. But they've got a great restaurant. They have homemade rolls, the honey cinnamon butter, which things I don't eat, but I like eating there because they do have some great stuff that I happen to like to eat. So now Texas Roadhouse is the number one restaurant chain in the United States, surpassing the Olive Garden. But here's something you may not know. The Texas Roadhouse also owns another restaurant, and we have one in here in our community. It's the Bubba's 33. You may not know that, but Texas Roadhouse owns Bubba's 33. Now, Bubba's 33 is kind of like a burger restaurant, almost like a Buffalo Wings. Yeah, kind of along that line. The burgers, the fries, the pizza, and it's doing quite well in this market. But the other restaurants that are getting pretty good, well, Chili's has now surpassed Applebee's, believe it or not. That's correct, 15% growth. And the Longhorn Steakhouse, well, has now gone past, you ready, Outback Steakhouse. Things have moved and changed over the years. People are going to different restaurants, different tastes. And speaking of different tastes, here's one for you. Guess what restaurant is getting ready to open to a number of Walmart? That includes Puyallup, Washington, Alamogordo, New Mexico, Tempe, Arizona, in Reno, Nevada, Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Bakersfield, California. The starting Walmarts. Guess what they're getting? The number one hot dog place in the United States. You ready? Der Wiener Schnitzel. I know you're going to say, what? What's a Der Wiener Schnitzel? Trust me, I remember the Der Wiener Schnitzel from my youth in El Paso, Texas. Yep, you get the hot dog and Der Wiener Schnitzel. It's just, they're the number one hot dog place in the U.S. Now, they're currently on the West Coast, but here's what they're doing. They are now starting to expand into Walmart stores. Like I told you, they got the current Walmart stores they're looking at right now. But Walmart stores could be getting a Der Wiener Schnitzel. So when you go to Costco, you spend, what, $1.50 for their hot dog and a drink? And now you go to Walmart and you get a Der Wiener Schnitzel. So they're different, but anybody who's had a Der Wiener Schnitzel over the years, now they know what a Der Wiener Schnitzel wiener is. And I've had many of them in my life. Now, will we ever see a Der Wiener Schnitzel in our Walmarts here locally? I do not know. But now there's your latest restaurant news, folks. News that you can use to eat. And now, Texas Roadhouse is now the number one restaurant in America, beating out the Olive Garden. And another restaurant they own is Bubba's 33, and I'll bet you didn't know that. Latest restaurant news. Now, go out and eat. And that's what I got to tell you, and now you know. Recently, a website had to find out what city in the United States had the best pay and the lowest cost of living. Sort of the best place to make your dollar go further. Now, they set a parameter here. The parameter was you had to be at least 250,000 population or larger. And they ranked the top 25 cities in the United States. Who was number one? Who was last? So I took a look at the numbers and I went, really? Turns out the number one city in the United States of America for the best pay and the lowest cost of living is none other than, you ready? Laredo, Texas. You heard me right. Laredo, Texas, sitting around 257,000 people down way South Texas. I mean, it's right on the Rio Grande River. It's a major crossing point from Mexico to the United States, so that's where a lot of problems have been. And Laredo, well, it's not exactly a giant metropolis. Like I said, it's about 257,000 people, and 95% of the people in Laredo are of Hispanic descent. So if you're a white Anglo-Saxon, you're pretty much in the minority in Laredo, Texas. But that's the number one place for the best wages and the lowest cost of living. So I thought to myself, who's number two? Turns out, second city in the United States, under, just one down from Laredo, Texas, is, are you ready? Fort Wayne, Indiana. You heard me right. Fort Wayne, Indiana is the second best city in the United States for pay and low cost of living. Now you might say to yourself, well, okay, we're number two, but how did everybody else fare? Well, here you go. Number 3 on the list was Toledo. Number 4 was El Paso, Texas, my home. Number 5, Wichita, Kansas. 6 was Corpus Christi, Texas. Number 7 was Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Number 8, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Number 9, well, that was Louisville, Kentucky. And number 10 on the list was Indianapolis, Indiana. And there is the top 10 cities for the best pay, the lowest cost of living in the United States. And now you have it. So, number 1 is Laredo. Number 10 is Indianapolis. But number 2, lowest cost of living and the best pay, is Fort Wayne, Indiana. Now, if you had to make a decision where you want to live, do you want to live in a city that has 95% Hispanic population and you're an Anglo? May not be the best choice. But if you want to take a look at what's offered, what you have, what do you get to do in Laredo, Texas? Not much. Not much. You ain't going riding a canal down on the Rio Grande, I guarantee you that. But that's where it is. That's where things stand. So if you're looking for the best pay and the lowest cost of living, you can live in Laredo, Texas, if that makes you happy. Or else you can live in the state of Indiana, in the city of Fort Wayne, because we're number 2. Indy's number 10. Well, people are abandoning states all around the United States. They're getting rid of moving and saying, we don't like living in this state. It's too costly, too restrictive, whatever. The number 1 state with the biggest loss of population is California. The number 2 is New Mexico, surprisingly enough. Number 3 is Hawaii. Yep, Hawaii, state of Hawaii. Of course, it's an island. People want to get off of there. And Hawaii ain't cheap living there. And then you can go to places like, West Virginia. People are leaving West Virginia. And Vermont. Surprisingly enough, the mountain state, the hill state of Vermont, they're leaving there too. But if you're looking for the best pay and the lowest cost of living, Laredo, Texas is number 1. But Fort Wayne, Indiana is number 2. And now you know. Well, there's all kinds of strange things out there, but one of the strangest ones I've heard about is palmistry. This is where somebody comes in, one of those gypsies or whatever, and takes a look at your palm and tells you your future, your fortune, tells you a lot about yourself. The art is called palmistry. And I happened to run across a very interesting article that says if you have the letter M in your palm, and it turns out I've got the letter M in my palm, the lines, the creases, and what have you. If that letter shows up M in your palm, well, that makes you kind of interesting. And according to what it says in palmistry, you means you have strong abilities and natural potential for success. All right, what's that mean? Well, you have intuition. Kind of take a look and see what's going on, read other people, kind of connect the dots sometimes. You also have sharp thinking. You kind of analyze things, take a look at stuff, take a look at a problem and say, I think I can figure that one out, get this thing done. And you also, according to palmistry, and the letter M in your hand, if you have it, you have leadership. It means you can get together people, discuss with them, and they say, hey, follow me. And probably they will. So if you're one of those people that has the letter M in your hand, now if you go to a palm reader, they might be able to tell you who you are, what you think. Now, does everybody have that letter in their hand? No, they don't. It's rather rare when you think about it. Not everybody has it. But if you have it, you may have something different in your life. Now, is that something that's going to make your life different or better? Well, depending on where you are today in your life, probably not. But gives you a chance to look back on yourself and say, hey, gee whiz, I had these things in my life I didn't realize. Maybe you didn't think about them. The intuition, the leadership, the sharp thinking. Look back on yourself and say, did I accomplish some of those things? Well, maybe this will tell you why. Because the palm reader says you got the magic M in your hand. And if you do, you could be somebody special. But are you? Well, take a look at your hand. See if you've got the M. You see how the design is. If you've got it, you're probably something special. And now you know. Well, oh, happy days have arrived. The WNBA owners and the WNBA Women's Association Players Union have reached an agreement, finally after a year and a half. So, who won big and who won little? Well, I can tell you, the Players Association actually won big. How big? Well, they didn't get their 50% of the gross revenue. They didn't get 30%. They actually ended up getting 20% of the gross revenue. But here's the real money part that comes in. Starting in the year 2026, this upcoming year, the maximum player salary for who considers the maximum stars, they can earn up to $1.4 million cap. And by the time 2032 rolls around, that can go up to $2.4 million. Pretty decent money. The average player, now this is the average player in the league, is going to get about $583,000 and in 2026, but by the time the year 32 rolls around, that could be up to $1 million for the average player. Now the basic minimum salary, all right, minimum's going to range anywhere from $270,000 to $300,000. But once again, that could rise by the year 2032. So these people coming off from the college right now, they're going to be making a big hit when they get in. And these salaries, well, pretty good money for these ladies to make. Some of the other deals they're going to get. How about this? The housing for the players is going to be covered in the years 26, 27, and 28. And players making under $500,000 in 29 and 30, they're going to be covered also. So they're going to get paid. They're going to have their apartments paid for as well. All in all, a very, very good deal. They're also going to continue with the charter flights and the jets. And by the way, cost about $300 million a year. That's going to continue. And then when they get the new destination, wherever they're going to play, they go to first-class, top-rated hotels in that particular area. Once again, they're going to be living high on the hog. Now, so what else they're going to get? Well, this is the other interesting thing that caught my attention. Former players who are no longer with the league, former players are going to be getting a check. That's right. So if you served, say, 12 years or more, you're going to get a check for $100,000. You served somewhere in the range of 8 to 11 years, you're going to get $50K. And if you got 5 to 7 years of service time, you're going to get, well, $30,000. Now, that's some of the deals going on. There's also going to be player rewards. Player of the Year, Championship Award, Best of this, Best of that. There's a bunch of different awards. All those numbers have also gone up. So how good you are at the end of the year, well, you're going to get some decent money. And that decent money will continue going up always. If they keep going on, the ratings keep getting better, and they bring in more money from the TV networks. Now, big thing to consider here is what they're going to have to do with the teams. Now, think about this. The teams are going to be required to have 12 players. So you have a 12-player roster. That's going to be the deal. And there's going to be pathways for the younger players to get star money. So if you come out of college and you're a star player and you can get star money rather than the lower amount you could get. And they're going to have pregnancy and childbirth salary caps arrangements. Really? And a player who is pregnant has to give the word to be traded if the team wants to trade him. Well, the player has to okay it. Now, you're wondering, all right, how's this all going to get going? How's it going to get started? Well, here's the good part. The month of April is going to be the most compressed month of April in the history of the WNBA players. Because from April the 1st, April the 6th, is going to be the expansion draft. Now, there's 2 new teams coming in. And they can draft players from all the other teams. The teams get to hold a certain number of players. I believe it's 5 and maybe 6. I'm not sure what that number is. But above that, only those other players can be drafted by the 2 new teams coming in. Expansion draft, that's April 1st to the 6th. Could the Indianapolis Fever lose some of their best players? It's entirely possible. Keep that in mind. April 7th to the 8th, they can give qualifying offers. So now the league can give qualifying offers to the players. That's April 7th to the 8th, 2 days. And then they have a free agency period from the 9th to the 11th. So free agents, you got your time, 2 days set in there. Yeah. And then April 12th to the 18th, then the NBA teams, the WNBA teams rather, can start signing the players. So it's going to be free agent signings. And about 80 to 100 players in the league are all free agents. So that's the time they're going to be signed to their contracts. And then April 13th, this is another biggie. The WNBA draft will be held on one day, April the 13th. Don't know if it's a Friday, but whatever it is, the college kids are all going to be drafted on that day. Who's going to get what? Who's going to get whom? Nobody knows yet. And then starting on April the 19th, 6 days after the draft happens, the training camp starts. That's right, training camp starts on the April the 19th, and 7 days later, April the 25th, they start playing. That's right, games start being happening. They start doing some basic games, some, I don't know, preseason games, call them what you will. Main games start in May, but they're going to start playing some area games starting April 25th. So there's the deal. Pretty good money? Yes, they're getting good money. Cut of the revenue? Yes, they're getting that. Great travel, great expenses, great players who's no longer playing. They're getting paid. Everybody's getting paid. Let's see if this works out. Because the only reason the entire league is getting money, a lot of money, is because of one person, Caitlin Clark. They lose the golden goose. This entire league, this entire money pit is going to disappear faster than a camel in the desert. I'm just telling you what could happen. Beware, folks, because what Caitlin Clark does determines what the league is ultimately going to do and where it's going to go. And now you know.